As I was starting to learn about some of this, that a lot of what we're experiencing isn't brand new information. It's already been happening in other places, and I keep thinking, this was going on in Colorado for a while, and some of the other western states. And how did we not learn from that? Why didn't that information get back here to us, or to other regions east of the Mississippi where we have shale deposits? What stopped that flow of information to us so that we would be able to learn and use the information from their poor experiences? But that didn't get back to us until recently. And so we're always behind in terms of what we should know and how to work with that information to make good decisions. But I have to blame media. Why weren't they reporting? What kind of judgment was made to withhold certain information from the American people? That's another piece of the deception.
I come up the driveway and I get out of the car, and Bill says the fellow's name, which I don't recall, but what I do recall is that he was with a gas industry, and the guy starts to talk, and I said, "You don't need to say anything else. You have nothing to say that's of interest to me, so I think you should just leave now." And Bill was like, "Sherry, that's so," and I said, I don't need to hear it. Just, you need to go. And I'm pretty much that way with anyone that comes up and says they're tied to the gas industry.
I haven't really been hassled that much.
Not too much.
Cut it short.
We cut it short, real quick. I tear up every letter that comes, every contract that comes. I just tear them up. I don't respond. I see no reason to respond. There was one fellow who made the mistake of coming up on the porch. There's been a couple guys. But he came up on the porch, and I went out there. We have this, hippies use the back door sign. And so this guy comes up on the porch, and he starts to talk to me. Baxter's barking like crazy, and I let Baxter bark at every stranger because I'm not sure who I've got here. And I'm usually, at that time, Bill was working off the farm, and I was here by myself. And so as soon as the fellow said he's with the gas industry, I said, just stop right there. Don't waste my time. You can get back into your truck and leave. And he goes, well, and he looked at the sign. He goes, I should have come around to the back door first. And I said, in your case, it wouldn't have helped. Just go. And so he left. The seismic testing guy, when he came up, I was waiting for the Frontier guy to work on our phone line. We were having problems. And this guy comes up, and he's got on his fluorescent outfit, they usually wear some kind of marker, and I didn't see any sign on his truck that said what company he was with, which was unusual. But so he came walking up, and he said, is this the Gorby place? And I looked at him and said, who's asking? And so he said, well, and he started to say he was with Geo Global Industries. And I said, just stop there. I said, are you tied to the gas industry? Oh, no, we have nothing to do with the gas industry, which I knew was a lie because they provide that information back to the gas industry. So as he, started to embed himself in this lie that he thought I was going to listen to, I said, you can stop right there because you don't want to tell me any more lies at this point in time. And so then he said, well, and I said, I think you just need to turn around and put your body back in that truck and get off of my farm, which he did, which I thought that was pretty nice. But I have nothing to say. I don't want to waste my time. And then don't come here and tell me a lie and expect me to believe that and then welcome you. No, just go. So I don't have anything to say to him.
Yeah.
But how did you get to this place?
Oh,
Of knowing.
my attitude about that?
No, not your attitude. Your attitude is great. Your attitude is very strong. You're very set in your opinion on it. But how does one who's living around people who support fracking for the most part, hydraulic fracking, get to a position of knowing very strongly that you disagree with it?
I disagree with a lot of extraction industries, even though I have family members that are actively employed by the coal industry, and and it supports them. And I have had that attitude for a long time, and I think it really comes down to I grew up around farmers, old farmers, and I mentioned before that growing up, my best friend was a person that was 70 years older than me, and he was a farmer, and always, as from
I don't remember ever not knowing him because I just met him as an infant and he was always part of my life. But he always talked about you need to protect and nourish the earth. And that was a very critical thing. So I had him on one level, who was a very significant person in my life, always talking about the importance of the earth and the land. And then my grandparents, who on a Sunday afternoon drive would take us out past the strip pits to show us how ugly that was and what was happening because of strip mining. You know, we'd drive past like a high wall that truly, you know, looked like a ravaged gorge. And then we would drive by a creek that wasn't nice and clear, it was orange. You know, so I had those kind of inputs as a kid, and that all made a difference to me. And so I think that probably helped to build or stimulate my attitude about some of the industries that really take no care of what the earth has to provide.
So for you, you're saying with your historical reference and your childhood upbringing that it was a no-brainer to be against hydraulic fracking.
Yeah, it was a logical progression. It just it falls right into it, and that there to me there was no way that somebody could offer me anything that would be more valuable than what I have right here under my feet. They're just, you know, $50, $100, $500, $5,000, it doesn't matter. Because they can't, that doesn't give me back what I would be giving away. There's just nothing they could give me that has that has the same benefit or the value. There isn't anything.
But if you have this land and everyone around you is selling and everyone around you is taking the money and polluting the environment around you, why not?
It's a value. It's a core value for me, and I'm not going to compromise my value for any money. You know, that to me, it's a moral decision. I am committed to this little piece of ground, and I'm going to do what I can do to make it better, to keep it safe, and there's nothing you can give me or offer me that I will accept to trade that off, because I'm going to take care of this piece of ground. I made that life commitment to this little space, and that's what I'm going to do. It's a value issue. It's not a financial issue. It's values. I'm not going to sell out my values that way. So I don't.
Do you think others in the community that do lease, do they think about the impacts on their neighbors? And I guess, is there any way you can characterize how people think about
I know.
part of the community?
You know, I'd like to think they think about their neighbors, but I don't think a lot of them do. I think they just think about it from a very defined perspective, that this is my space and I have the right to decide what happens in my space, and they don't think about the relational impact of what happens beyond their space. When you came into our farm, the first part of our driveway is a right-of-way through another person's property. And you can pretty much see a significant difference. Well, in the daytime you could, probably at night you couldn't really tell. But he does nothing to take care of his ground. He does nothing to keep it nurtured, and it's all kind of grown up and that type of thing. And then you get to where our gate is, and then all of a sudden the fields are attended to, green, they're mowed, and you know, we do what we can do to keep the place healthy. And he has leased. And one of our water sources for our livestock are not far from that boundary. And when we had our water tested, I talked with Dr. Stout, who's with Wheeling Jesuit University, and looked at our water samples and stuff. And he goes, "Wow, you should be drinking this water." And he made that kind of reaction about every one of our water sources on the farm, you know, that they were such healthy water sources. And I said, in terms of geographic proximity, this one, we call it the spring that's in the bowl just because of how it's shaped back there. And this is the one that I have the most concern with, because he leased, my neighbor is leased,
and the slope of the land, if there's going to be any kind of runoff that impacts one of our water sources quickly, it will be that one. And I'm sure that my neighbor hasn't thought beyond that fence line, because he doesn't even think about the fence line in terms of helping to maintain his end of it. So he certainly isn't going to be thinking about what's going to happen to my water sources because of what he does on his property.
And you're now planning to do regular monitoring?
I monitor every week. I use a conductivity pen, and I monitor. I can't give you the chemical the technical terms for it, but there's 4 categories that I've been recording every week now for a year, and I send them into actually Dr. Stout to his database as well, so that he's got them in there too, and. So far we haven't seen any extreme swings, but if there is, then I'll bring in a certified lab again to do the other kind of testing and see what I can do on.
Do you know what you could do?
There probably isn't very much at this point in time, is just try to prove that, our water's been contaminated and somehow they need to make compensation for that. But in West Virginia, that hasn't proven to be very effective. And in the northern parts of Ohio and Cuyahoga County and near the northern part of our state, where there's more drilling and stuff, the folks who've had water contamination have all ended up in the same situation where it's denied that there was any kind of contamination related to the fracking industry. So it's into that. The only thing that encourages me is that there was a settlement for $1.6 million in Pennsylvania where the 3 families that settled did not agree to hush clause. And so there's finally one on the books where you can say, here is an example. But it's kind of unusual when water gets all of a sudden, it's been great water for years and years and years, and all of a sudden turns brackish and your animals won't drink it. And coordinates with the time frame when there's drilling. It's kind of like, hello, isn't there a correlation here? But so, we'll see.
Have you seen any indication of air quality problems, and do you know if there's any monitoring?
There isn't any air monitoring happening here right now, and there is none to my knowledge in the northern part of our county where there is more active drilling. The drilling in our end of the county probably will kick up after the first of the year, which is what we've heard from some of the seismic testing people. When we were at the winery, there were some folks there a few months ago that were with the gas industry, and one of the comments they made to the owners of the winery when they were looking out at the view, how pretty of a view that was, and they said, this is going to change dramatically. And I was like, oh, nice to hear that. And we know it will, just by looking at aerial shots of Pennsylvania. That's going to happen here.
And what about if you did have an air quality complaint?
I got
Did you even know who to call?
Department of Environmental Protection is who we would call first, but we went to an air quality hearing in West Virginia for an air quality permit. What a farce. They had 5, Yuri was at that meeting too, and I think they had 5 representatives from the Department of Environmental Protection. And, people were expressing their concerns about air quality. It was permitted. It got approved. It just was amazing to me. It was like, well, that specific well will meet all of the parameters. It didn't matter that well was within a mile of another well, which was within a mile of another well, and they don't look at the collective impact of all of that on the air quality. They look at that well. And so I just saw an announcement for another one in West Virginia, and I thought, why bother going to the hearing? Now, I'm here in Ohio, but I go to those because I'm just right across the river. As the wind blows, it's like, hello, we're all going to be affected by this, and we're going to have the same things here. But no, there's not any real air monitoring going on at all. I've actually had talked with some folks who have said if they want to put an air or water bots on our farm, that we would agree to do that. And so if they get the funding to do that, then they'll put them here. Because like I said, eventually there's the well pad about 2 miles across the hill that way, and another one that will be coming in about a over that direction. So eventually we'll be having all of those same unfortunate impacts.
And do you have, like, knowing that activity is likely to be enhanced after the first of the year, do you just hear that informally, or is there an official source that
Informally.
gives you schedule? Once it really revs back up, will you, I mean, I've heard of people knowing flaring schedules or knowing something about production.
ODNR, if you go to Ohio Department of Natural Resources, you can get a lot of information from their maps in terms of areas that have been permitted, sites that have been permitted, and active drilling or productive wells. But I believe that they can, let me think, I have to get this straight in my head. They can actually be developing a well site before the public announcement is made for the permit. And so they cannot sink the bit until they have the permit approved, but they can have the whole site already set up so that as soon as that permit's been reviewed, they can immediately start drilling. So you don't really have much of a window from when when they permit to when they actually put the well into production. So it's a pretty short window if you want to try to do any intervention. It's just trying to keep up with learning about what all the processes are and the legal aspects all tied to it. It's hard to put the time into it. There's several of us that try to do that, and it's just, you always just feel like you're 10 steps behind. When you start feeling like you've got a grasp on something, then some other obtuse thing happens. It's like, wow, I didn't even think of that. Yeah.
Do you, is this area, you've said that you work in a small group that tries to stay informed and help with education. Is there, what level of support do you get from public agencies, from other environmental organizations, and
Public agencies, zero. Public agencies, zero. There are a number of grassroots initiatives that are pretty good. Here in Ohio we have NeoGAP, and the Ohio Environmental Council does some fairly good stuff. They're actually just trying to get some dates on this. They're developing a citizen well monitoring workshops based on like the Pennsylvania Sierra Club's training, and so trying to get the dates for when that training will happen in the region, and it's going to be an actual hands-on training. I did the West Virginia Sierra Club's citizen well monitoring training, which was all an online training, which was very good, but hands-on in this situation I think would be actually a little better for us than the virtual training. And regionally, online access isn't quite as mainstream in this region as you would have in other areas. I even know like my college, the one that I'm with, we even put in what we called them access centers so that people could come to our facility for computer access because of the poor receptivity if you wanted to do any kind of internet kind of thing. So online options are not always as good in our area. But anyway, but there are a number of grassroots groups that you can get some good information from that are very active in seeking out resources and sharing that information. But even at that, you still have to put in a lot of time to get a grasp of it.
I have one more question. What like in terms of like what keeps you going? What gives you hope? What makes you keep driving and pushing and keeping your conviction?
Sometimes I think it's just because I'm obstinate and crazy, but but the other part of it is I really believe that when pushed to it, people will eventually do the right thing once they really understand. Unfortunately, they come to their understanding sometimes a little too late to prevent problems. They come to the understanding once they're already in the middle of a disaster.
but I think it's the, I still kind of believe that at the core humanity is still good and will do the right things.
That's a real motivation for us as a group, is trying to not wait for disaster.
Yeah, don't, right.
Say that. Can you say that as a sentence then? Like for people who are at the very beginning stages who haven't seen what you've seen, what is like advice that you could give?
Start now, don't wait. Don't wait until you're looking at a disaster and then say, okay, how do we fix this? It's a whole lot better for everybody if you say, let's prevent the problem before it happens. So that's what I would say is pay attention now and take the steps necessary to not let a disaster happen. And I think that it makes much more sense to be proactive instead of reactive. That's what I would tell them. I was babysitting Jimmy, and I think he was 3.5, 4, and I probably shouldn't have done this, but I did. I did a number of things with that little guy, but we started talking about coal mining. I mean, why would you talk to a little kid about coal mining? But I did. I don't know what we were talking about. Something came up that brought it up. And I was saying, it's really a bad thing. And I said, think about a chocolate bar with almonds. He hates almonds. And I said, and you've just eaten all the chocolate off of it, and all you're left with are those almonds, which he thought was pretty bad. I said, that's what strip mining is. You just ate all the chocolate, which would be your ground, and you're left with almonds, which he just thought that was terrible. So he was like, he thought it was a bad idea. But of course, I didn't get to influence him as much as I would have liked to, because he's in the coal industry. But you do something for protecting your health, or do you have a good job? And that's a debate I had with folks in the 70s about the steel mills, and it was like, whatever it takes to have a decent income is what they thought was acceptable. And very rarely from the angle of, you could probably have both. And that's how I look at the gas industry, that if they would invest some of their resources, maybe, I'll go as far as maybe, they could do something to more safely extract it and to not do as much damage. But I don't see that movement on the gas industry's part. But people are still saying the same argument. It's either this or this, and never that you could really have both. That it really should be decent jobs and a safe, healthy environment. It should be both. That's not this valley's culture, unfortunately.